Hello, this is Michael Stone, the host of Conversations. We're committed to bringing you leading-edge thinkers in the areas of environmental restoration, social justice, and spiritual fulfillment. On our program, we look for positive solutions to local and global issues that leave you touched, moved, and inspired to action. Our weekly guests include local and global experts and concerned citizens working together to heal the wounds that separate, alienate, and marginalize people. Well, I'm thrilled today to have my friend and teacher Gabrielle Roth on the show. We're going to be talking about balancing intuition, instinct, and intellect. And Gabrielle Roth makes records that people can move to. She's a recording and performing artist, an author, teacher, director, and creator of the Five Rhythms School of Moving Meditation and Ecstatic Dance. And the sound of Roth and her band, The Mirrors, ranges from world music to urban street beat to chant of Buddhist mantras. Gabrielle's the author of several books, including Sweat Your Prayers, Maps to Ecstasy, and one we're going to talk about, which is going to be released in the spring, Connections, the Five Threads to Intuitive Wisdom. Gabrielle, welcome back to Conversations. Are you there, Gabrielle?
I'm right here.
Ah, lovely. Right here in lovely Manhattan, huh?
Right here in lovely, freezing cold Manhattan. That's always an auspicious way to begin, in the end. A giant ending.
That's right.
There we go.
Start at the end and begin. Well, I know I have a lot of people who have been looking forward to having you on the show. And before we talk about connections and intuition and instinct and intellect, can you give people a little overview of the Five Rhythms practice and how it developed?
Oh, my God, Michael. It developed organically.
It relates to instinct. I thought I'd ask that.
Yeah, it developed organically out of my own instincts, intuition, and an intimate connection with human beings. It was, I fell in love with people, and the only thing I knew how to do was move and dance. And so I managed at a very early age of 16 to start seducing other people into their dance. And that grew and developed and evolved into a five-rhythm practice in my 20s. And, it evolved into the five rhythms in my 20s. And it didn't evolve into the concept of a practice until probably, I'm not sure, late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it was a body of work. But I think I was so busy creating and engaged with just the pure creative process. It never dawned on me that I was creating something that would last for, the next 500 years or beyond. That, in fact, I was sitting inside the DNA of the creative process itself.
I remember first dancing with you. I think we've talked about that dance in 1974 at the Jack Tar Hotel.
Oh, my God.
And walking through these silk banners that were blocking the doorway and spun me into this room with this bunch of people. I was late. In those days, I was always late, it seemed. Now I'm always on time. It just was this incredible experience, but I didn't know much about you or where to find you. I ended up doing Sufi dancing for a number of years before I finally found, and maybe that was when it became a five rhythms practice. And I think that's kind of what I want to say, Gabrielle, is to maybe give people a brief overview of what you mean by a five rhythms practice, because there's some people that actually probably don't know anything about that are listening today.
Well, the five rhythms are movement patterns or energy patterns that are, one, the DNA of the creative process. Two, they are a perspective, a way to see how energy moves and changes. And energy always moves and changes in waves, sound, light. We change and move in waves, even the cycles of life. So everything essentially is vibrations, waves, patterns, cycles. And the five rhythms represent that. Looking for the dynamic state of being, of change. So they are a practice in that we enter each time for the first time. So in a funny way, we're all always beginners. We have a simple exercise we do with body parts, and I have probably done that 10,000 times, and yet I always learn something, and I always enter ye as a child into the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is within, and it is inside of our bodies. And so as I enter through my hands or my shoulders or my head or my spine or my knees or my feet, enter into the deeper inside me, I am connected to this giant flow of energy that's constant and constantly changing. So we have a practice, and practice almost sounds like practice makes perfect. We always hear that. But no amount of this practice will make us perfect at the 5 rhythms, because they are a dynamic state of being, or they represent a dynamic state of being. So the only thing that we can hope for is to be seduced by them into being real, into being authentic and alive and aware and awake. These things the practice offers us. Yeah. And these things are also always changing.
You know, I have to say that, never told you this, but I always hated the body parts and couldn't wait till they were over till I could get to the meat of the dance, and do the 5 rhythms. But it's changed so much for me over all these years that now, you're right. What I discover in just going through the body parts and paying attention and being curious about the state I'm in today, or the state I'm in at this very moment when I'm in my body parts, there's something amazingly grounding about doing that. And I've grown to love the body parts. But that's my own experience. Is I've learned that I didn't know anything about them, and I kept deepening that part of the practice. And of course, there's much more to the practice than just that, but it's a great way to get grounded and centered and present.
Well, if you look at the body as a Bible, which I do, of course, my body is my Bible, then you're entering into the scriptures, or my shoulder has as much to tell me about any book on this earth, about my where I'm at right now, who I am right now. And so it's learning to listen to what's going on inside of us and around us, and learning to follow and learning to lead, so that as we do the practice of the body parts, we're practicing being a follower, following my shoulder, following my elbow, and we're also practicing being a leader, allowing part of me to lead. So that actually when we're confronted with the same dynamic outside of ourselves, like a person who's leading, we know how to follow. We know how to listen. We know how to give and surrender. The same with when we're required to be the leader. We understand that in everything is the seed of its apparent opposite. So being a leader is truly being a follower, like following the group energy, the group instincts. And we learn all this firsthand in a practice that's very personal, very prayerful, in the sense that a prayer is what you make it. It's an active and resourceful communication with, quote, God. And for me, God is the dance. So this is my way of dialoguing with that force. We can call many names, from Great Spirit to God to Tao, but this is my direct hookup to this force that moves all living things. And the prayer is that it will do with me what it will, that it will use me, that it will rearrange anything that's blocking the totality of its force and flow, and that I can trust it, and this is the bottom line to learning to trust our instincts, which are rooted firmly in our feet and our centers, so that we're like animals. The instinct is very much like an animal. We pick up information from the earth itself, from the vibrations in, around, under, and over, and us. We listen with our entire being. So generally speaking, Western people have been head-centered, and that's like a billion miles away from the feet. So we're not picking up messages. We're just picking up things in the chat room, the me-mails and the I-mails, and arranging them into patterns that allow us to control and feel that the universe is a predictable and safe place to be. So that would be to think like that is to be fear motivated, because of course the scary concept is that the universe is a very unpredictable place to be, which is therefore quite exciting or quite scary. Your choice. And so we practice being unpredictable. We practice entering the same river every time in a different way. I don't know why we would have to repeat an elbow movement or a knee movement. There's no reason. It's like there's so many more left to be explored and investigated. Or maybe we do repeat the same movement for a year, and then we come to the teaching that it's unraveling, unfolding within us, so that it goes all ways and works all ways.
I think that one of the things that people have trouble that haven't engaged in the practice, or maybe have come to a class or come to a Sweat Your Prayers and don't realize the amazing impact it has when you leave the room, that the practice itself has real world deep value in terms of our own path, in terms of our being in the world, like you said, about the leader and the follower issues, about dealing with our emotions, and the whole range of issues that we have on a day-to-day basis. We meet them on the dance floor.
Well, we do, and the 5 rhythms are a philosophy, that energy is motion, motion is energy, that we are a dynamic, changing force, and that they are a perspective, a way to see anything that's moving. You can see anything that's moving has its flowing state of being, and its beginning, its receptiveness, and we can see it as it changes to a more staccato, organized, linear focus. We can see it when it goes chaotic. I mean, it's in the world around us. New York City is chaos, especially at this time of year. But everybody in New York City is on a staccato mission to get their list taken care of. From Mary to Jane to everybody in between. And there's the lyricalness of Hawaii or Maui, but Kauai is quite still. But then they can be disturbingly chaotic, during a storm. Everything, we can see everything. We can see a relationship. That sometimes, like to have a relationship, we have to begin to find our flow together. We have to be able to be together, to be able to physically coexist together in a car, in a movie, in a restaurant, doing ordinary things. And if we can't find that, then it's very hard to skip to the staccato phase where we start dealing with our contracts and our needs and this is what I will do, what I won't do, our lines and our boundaries. And beyond that, to enter into the freestyle stage of after commitment of trust, and allowing that this person could go to a dance event or this person could go anywhere or do anything that's in their mission and destiny and not threaten the relationship. So the practice of dancing hundreds of hours of chaos prepares us for the chaos of relationship and for the surrender and letting go that's required of us in order to survive and surrender and celebrate a relationship. And then there's always that lyrical place in a relationship where it's more like a tantric field where none of these things are questions anymore. It's where we truly, the bond is beyond us. It just is. We wouldn't even question it. We've ironed out all these other rhythmic evolutions, and in the stillness of understanding that our relationship is simply an act of God, so to speak. It's a coming together into the third, that something's bigger than us, that it's all about that something, that it's not really about me and you, but it's about the relationship itself is alive and dynamic and ever-changing. And there's something holy there. There's something to be truly, deeply respected. It's much more like a prayer at this place. So that's enough about that.
Yeah, that's a good explanation of it. Let's talk a little bit about the book Connections, the 5 Threads of Intuitive Wisdom, since it's going to be released in the spring, and I know a lot of people will want to get a copy of that. Let's talk about intuition. What is it that blocks us from finding and following our intuition, first of all?
Many things. Many things. One of the things that stops us is that we're not physically embodied. So we're not picking up the intuitive messages being sent to us by our own instinctive system. We're not following the thread. The mind is chaos, just as the heart is staccato and the body is flowing. And so we have to be able to exist in a freestyle manner within the context of our own minds, and the mind has to be embodied. In other words, I have to really know my mind, the mind of my feet, and the mind of my knees, and the mind of my hands. That it's not isolated to my head. That I'm a total being, and that I pick up messages. Like intuitively, we pick up very different ways. I see visuals. I've been to psychics who pick up in all manner of ways. Some people read cards and just know something. It's about knowing as opposed to thinking. It's about something moving in that lyrical field of the unified field, so that being psychic is kind of, or doing a reading is kind of like being a blood transfusion in a way. I enter into the other person's psyche and read what I'm finding, or deliver what I'm finding there. So that's when you're actually utilizing your intuition for someone else. But when we utilize it for ourselves, we need to be clear. We need to have already clarified what fear feels like inside of us, how fear manifests physically in us, emotionally and mentally, how fear manifests inside Gabrielle. If I know that intimately, if I know my own field intimately, then when I pick up a feeling that there's going to be an earthquake, or that I shouldn't do this or I should do that, or to move towards somebody or away, I can discern if that's coming from my instinct and intuition, or if that's coming from my fear, because they're very, very different in the way that we feel them and experience them. And I think that's why in the 5 Rhythms practice, we have levels of practice. For one, the 5 Rhythms themselves are simply about getting physically embodied, finding our feet on this earth, and learning to know and love and trust our bodies. And once we do that, we open our capacity to feel and to know our feelings, to really know the core energetic feelings, how they move and change within us, and what language they speak to us, how we function, how my psyche functions. It's different from yours, and it's different from anybody else's. So that getting to know oneself, it's like Socrates said, know thyself. I think he wrapped it up, and then he died. He said it in 2 words, and then, and it's a deep and profound thing to know thyself. So then when we get to the actual mind, which is the thing that is all of it, the divine mind, we begin to be able to tell the difference between listening to that which is divine within us, or our, quote, higher self, or our intuitive self, and the part of us that's just manufacturing melodrama on a minute-by-minute basis. So that takes practice. This is why I say, do you have the discipline to be a free spirit? A free spirit is a totally unbound, completely instinctive, intimately connected, intuitively driven force of energy. And so that takes letting go. Because I think we all probably recognize that most of us are not really there yet. There's still a lot of stuff going on in the head.
Yeah.
A lot of future, a lot of past, a lot of neurotic present. And so a practice that has any value at all is a practice that leads us away from these distractions into a deeper, and I would call it more, divine self. It's all part of the divine self, but it's really what channel you're listening to.
Yeah. One of the things, Gabrielle, that you do in so many of your workshops and in your theater work is to work with ego characters. And, ego seems to be a major block. These characters seem to be a major block in accessing our intuition. Can you talk about the purpose of the ego and how to, through movement, transcend that? I'm sure we're not going to totally get rid of it, but to transcend it and lead us to our most authentic self and to this place of divine wisdom that you talk about.
I don't think that we do transcend it.
That we do transcend the ego.
No, I don't think we do.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
I don't think we transcend much. It's I don't there are people who could probably speak forever on transcendence. And I'm probably not the best hope for humanity on that subject.
Right.
Because my investment or investigation this time around has really been in the transformation. So for me, the ego being the biggest part of my is the creator of all distractions for me. And the ego always wants control. It always wants to be separate. And any thought that's moving in those two directions is by nature an ego. So, however, it's massive. Like if people think we can read a book or do something like that, and magically find a number and have like a fairy wand solve the whole human situation, then I think I can't go there. However, we can spend a good portion of our lifetime, if not the entire lifetime, getting to know what is real and what is not. What part of me is this instinctive, intuitive, divine self, and what part of me is this melodramatic? It's the difference between being a mystery and being a melodrama queen or king. And I always like to see it as the ego is driving the car, and what we need to do is, and the soul is in the back seat. The ego is just using my hands, using my heart, using my mouth, using my eyes, using my ears, using my feet to just do everything it wants and needs and desires. And the transformation is, what do we have to do in order to change the positions of things so that the ego is sitting in the back seat and the soul is driving the car? Well, the soul driving the car means that the soul is committed to kind of, what do you call that, cruise control? Like,
right.
The soul is committed to being on cruise control and basically going with the flow of something greater. This is a very big conundrum for us as humans. It seems such a wild and preposterous thing that we could let go of control and that things will work out. This is probably the scariest thought besides death. And death is, of course, the ultimate let go. So the ego isn't going anywhere. Nobody's going to conquer it or master it. At very best, we get to know it intimately. And then we know when it says the same old, oh, that's this part of me. And I don't have to listen, and I certainly don't have to act on it. Because it is like a drill sergeant. It's always telling us what to do and what not to do.
Mine's like a colonel.
Not to be. Who to be, who not to be, what to do, what not to do, where to go, where not to go. So it's just basically like a, what's that other thing in the car that everybody has except me?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Cup holder. I don't know.
No. This lady or man, or even Snoop Dogg has his own app that is this.
Oh, the map thing?
Not a map. It's like it tells you go left, go right.
Yeah.
What do we call that?
I got a blank on it because mine doesn't work in my Prius.
The only one who can blank here.
No.
I can just see it. It's right here in the back of my head. It will not.
It's MapQuest on a computer. I forgot what they call it in a car, but I know what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about.
You know, the thing that I struggle with, which quote struggle with, that's one of my ego characters that gets in the way, but is how to distinguish between the signs and signals that come from the soul, from intuition, and those that come from the ego. I mean, how do you get on that cruise control in a way that you can get out of the way and allow it to happen?
Stop thinking, Michael.
Gabrielle, you've known me a long time.
No, I say that generally speaking. You're thinking about it. It probably is. Then that's probably where you are. You know, it's like thing that comes in. Intuitions are not analyzed or compared or formulated or planned. They're not fear generated or they appear out of nowhere. And they disappear. And you have to be there to pick them up. You have to be here right now to pick it up. So sometimes for some people who are very far away from this state of being, it'll be like a gnawing sensation. And after something has happened, one might say, I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it. But you see, knowing it and trusting that one knows it and acting upon knowing it, that's very different. You know, knowing it isn't enough. Mm-hmm. We have to put our mouth where our feet go, or, it's like we have to organize the entire psyche to pay attention, to be aware, and to act on the basis of this part of us.
Yeah.
I had to navigate the last year this way, as a matter of life and death. So I was thankful for those so many years, 50 or so, of practice. Because although I couldn't move or actually do the 5 rhythms last year, all the many dances were sitting inside of me as I made all the many choices and decisions that would be decisive in terms of life or death for myself. And that's when I really, of course, it all comes to you. Because especially, for those who don't know, I was diagnosed with cancer last year, and it's such a huge thing for the mind to grab, and there's almost no good news. It's a little bit of good news, there are many opinions, and many different doctors have different opinions, and ways to go, and things to do, and places to go, and things, people to see, and one has to be truly deeply connected to oneself to navigate any life-threatening disease or any life-threatening situation, let alone just day-to-day existence.
Especially within our medical system.
Well, yes. We have I have had some amazing doctors in this last year, and I say prayers for them all the time, because it's quite a job. You know, it is really, again, it's another job where you are, well, at least in the field of oncology, but I think in many medical fields, you have to be able to be with the unknown. You have to be able to be with I don't know. And you have to be able to follow hunches as well as science. You know, so there's a place where doctors, lawyers, you know, all kinds of professions, artists, scientists, where we're all following this same momentum of mind that I'm speaking of. And we're all dealing with the same monster who wants to tell us how to do that.
Right. And one of the things that we do is we surrender to the so-called professional. You know, if you'd have done all the things that the doctors initially wanted to do, you wouldn't be here right now.
No, we wouldn't be having this conversation, would we?
We certainly wouldn't. So that's a good example, though, of intuition, Gabrielle, is to trust that, you know, and you waited to make a decision while everybody was pushing you to make decisions, you know, to take chemo or radiation or cut your head off or whatever. And so many people succumb to the system and do not listen to their intuition. I think it's a brilliant example of the kind of courage and presence that it takes to follow our own intuition of what you've just been through.
Well, you know, I think more than courage, it takes practice.
Yeah.
Like, I had a lot of practice of listening to myself. And
I'm always amazed when people get bored in the 5 rhythms. I get less and less of any kind of boredom because I get more and more curious about that. And some people come and they do it for a month or so, like they do yoga for a month or so or something, and then go, that was fun, now I'm going to try, you know, Subud or something. You know, you've practiced for 5 decades of doing that, which prepared you.
Yes, yes. I have, and only by sheer fascination. Like, what fascinates me is that myself and everyone around me keep changing. And so the practice keeps changing. And because it's just a reflection of all the other changes going on. And I know that people are bored. I think that often, you know, they'll come in, or that we all go through stages of boredom.
Yeah, it's not that it doesn't.
I've gone through stages of, you know, I'll go through boredom with my dance,
but it's different to be curious about your boredom and name it.
You know, my ego loves boredom. It just eats boredom up. It just can't wait to get a big mouthful of boredom, you know, because that just proves its existence. And you know, there is a place where we learn how to, through practice, to pass by that border. And to outsmart it, so to speak, you know, to outdance it, really. So there are a lot of tricks that we learn along the way in doing a practice that allow us to circumvent certain patterns that we carry with us and to recognize them. Well, here's the boring Gabrielle. A watcher, she's now going to make the music boring or the room boring or her partner boring or, you know, anything but face the truth that she's just boring. And, you know, that in that moment of truth, one can say, oh, I'm boring. How fascinating that I would allow that to be my dance. Well, what is that dance of boredom? And then begin to move like a truly bored person and actually begin to get fascinated with how much I know about being bored and how much I know about the patterns and the shapes and the energies of boredom. And pretty soon I'm dancing.
Yeah. I love what you said at the beginning there. I want to re-say that, actually, that boredom proves the ego's existence. That's just brilliant to me. I never thought of that, but of course it does.
Yes, it said, see, I told you.
Exactly.
I told you before you came here, idiot. This is boring. You know? You deserve better. And it's anyway, the ego is definitely geared and pampered and funded to and fed with this whole concept of separation. So boredom is a great separator because we never just sit around and we'll go, I'm bored, but usually why? The reason is always external. I'm bored because there's nothing to do. I'm bored because the conversation is boring me. I'm bored because I don't like the music, or the projection. Boredom and then projection. Why are you bored? Somebody else's fault, really.
Almost always.
I'm a fascinating person, but the boredom is unbearable. So, this is how we talk to ourselves. And as long as we're doing that, nothing has to change. We're on sacred ground here. We have made ourselves superior. We'll live another day behind the wall of isolation and separation. And then we'll think that the problem is somewhere else, out of our hands, beyond our control. Hopeless. It'll just spin like a board game.
Yeah.
Only we do not get $200. We do not pass go. We do not buy Boardwalk. Impoverished spirit. That's what we end up with.
An impoverished spirit.
An impoverished spirit.
Yeah. I want to make sure before we get to the end, time always flies on this show, but that we talk about the 5 realms of intuition and how to access them, the instinct, the intimacy, the intention, integrity, and inspiration. Can you speak to those realms of intuition and how they're accessed through the practice of 5 rhythms?
Well, instinctively, we're like animals. Like, I began here. It's like we need to find our feet and learn to listen to the soles of our feet and to feel the world around us, the space around us, in the physical world. That instinct is physical. And so the more we become part of the physical world, the more we become instinctive. And secondly, once we become instinctive, we become intimately connected to the world around us. We start to feel people sitting next to us. We start to feel the animal. We feel the hungry guy. I bought a sandwich today. I ate half of it, and then instead of leaving it there, I wrapped it up, and I thought, somebody out there is going to want a sandwich. And I walked a half a block, and this guy said, would you buy me a sandwich? And I said, I already did. But I was open before I left the restaurant, I could feel him. And it's that, what I'm talking about, having an intimate relationship with the world around us, to get into a taxi and to feel the driver. Maybe he's had a really tough day. Maybe he had a really irate customer before you. Or maybe he's Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. Maybe he's off shift now. Maybe he's the guy bringing you the miracle. Who knows? But if we feel the energy and the vibration in the cab and the person, we have a better chance. So it's a way of extending. And an intention is to put the mind, like if you're wanting to know something, like where should I go, or if I want to know something for someone else, asking the question, making my intention known, being clear about what I want, and then waiting for the answer, knowing that I will not figure it out, but I can become the question and walk and talk the question, and the answer will arrive. And integrity is when we're that connected, so that I'm not just feeling my situation, for example, with cancer, but all the cancer patients in the entire world. I know them intimately. I feel them. I know their intention. And I feel like they are an integral part of my universe, an integral part of my awareness, that I don't walk alone here. As somebody with struggling, surviving cancer, whatever we do with it, I am part of a tribe. And I'm part of the tribe of mothers. I'm part of the tribe of parents. I could just go on. So it's like, where am I hooked up? Where do I feel the natural integrity, the organic integrity of my beingness and its furthest extension?
Yeah.
And inspiration? That's the whole deal. And I be inspired by the force that moves me and all living things to be as much of a human being as I was born to be. Can I be a living prayer wheel, a 5-pointed star in a dark, luminous sky? Can I be all that I am meant to be and born to be? Before I die, can I do everything I came here to do and be and see and know and feel? These would be the questions. And this would be why we would do a practice. To return to the questions every day, to use a pattern that is tested, that works, that is organic, that is deeply related to the human being, to the body, to the heart, to the mind, to the soul, to the spirit of who we are, not only individually, but as a unified whole, to surrender to a language that can inform us of these deeper questions, that can inform us not only of the questions, but point us in the direction of some of the possible answers that would be individuated. The answer for me may be slightly different for you. That we could be aware of all of this. That's why we would come to a practice such as the 5 rhythms.
Well, as you know, I've spent 3 decades in the corporate world and left.
I'm sorry, Michael. No, it's
that explains some of the flaws, you know. But
tells me everything.
One of the things that, I left the corporate world because I felt like I was a head on sticks and, that we were all kind of using our bodies to carry our heads from meeting to meeting. And that I really wanted to do something else, and that's why, I started to teach the 5 rhythms myself. But my other avocation, so to speak, was working on environmental and social justice issues. I had the very clear insight that how could we possibly save the planet from the destruction, from our habitual actions that are causing the destruction of all of our ecosystems if we weren't in our own bodies. And I would like you to talk about that a little bit, about how being in our body reconnects us with the earth and with the cycles of the earth. And I was up all night with a full moon. I mean, I always am when there's a full moon. We're so affected and we're so numb to that for the most part. Can you talk about how this practice reconnects us with the bigger cycles of nature?
Well, because as you connect to those cycles within yourself, you begin to see them in nature more clearly. And we begin to see that the body is the earth. It is the big body, Mother Earth, the body which bears us, which births us, which we return to when we're done. And that there's a full circle, that there's a circular nature to the way life moves. That we're not born in puberty, do a birth cycle, then have a maturity, die, and come back as a child. there is a certain organic structure to the way things move and change. And as we take this on within us, we see it mirrored and reflected everywhere in every direction. And as I begin to care for my body, I begin to care for the earth's body. Or for some, it could be the other way around, the teaching and the learning. However, I would point out to you, Michael, that when you were part of the corporate world, the whole world, in the whole Western world, was a talking head. So it wasn't limited to people in corporations.
That's true.
It was a national, international epidemic. So that many people in corporate world today are doing yoga or dancing or, stepping into themselves, and that world is changing too, as all the worlds are changing. Some may change faster because that one comes with, a lot of bureaucracy. But as Apple and some of the companies have shown, there are many ways to move forward, and especially in a time which is chaos. We live in chaos. We will be in a millennium of chaos, which the internet is a symbol of, and the incredible creativity and boundaryless world of chaos. So I just think that this practice has the same intentions as 75,000 years ago shamanic shamanism had. It's to have some reverence, to bring back awe and reverence for the way things move and change, whether it's the field that we're plowing or the moon in her cycles or the sun as it's, rising and setting, or just the actual dance of everything. The way a flower is a seed and becomes a beautiful bloom and dies. How many orchids have I had in my house while I'm still here and watching that whole cycle? And so that, I don't know, as we become more aware of ourselves, we become more aware of it all around us. Because if we're separate and distant from our feelings and our bodies and even our own mind, maybe not our thinking, but our mind, then we're not picking up any kind of connection to anything. We are disconnected. So that often we'll be doing one thing, feeling another, and thinking a third. And a general schizophrenia, which is distracting and discombobulated and disconnected. So that is, the state of things that we're trying to change now. And each of us is doing our part.
Yes, we are.
I'm assuming anybody listening to us right now is, doing their part in a giant way. And I just want each of us to know that it matters, that you matter, that what you're doing, even though it might be seemingly, it doesn't seem to be having big waves or making big ripples or doing anything, it is. If as each of us comes into this sense of being, of change, of dynamic, energetic surrender, this is a prayer for all of us.
Beautiful. Well, Gabrielle, we've come to the end of our show, but I just want to tell you how much I personally appreciate all the years of inspiration and understanding and love that we've shared and the gift you've been to so many people around the world. And if people would like to find out more, they can go to www.gabrielleroth.com. And also locally, if you'd like to come and practice the 5 rhythms, you can go to moving-meditation.com.
I want to say, Michael, can I quickly say also to go and check out the 5 Rhythm Reach Out or
yes.
5rro.org or our
5R, is that right?
5rro.org.
.org, okay.
Where we're doing all the reach out across the globe with elders and kids and hospitals and rehab centers, and just in every direction that we can.
Yes, absolutely.
Bringing the 5 rhythms.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. I'm going to bring my heavy knickers and come to New York, and I will see you very soon. So have a wonderful holiday, and thank you again, Gabrielle.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Conversations is an independently produced program supported by KVMR 89.5 Nevada City and listener contributions. We are committed to bringing you leading-edge thinking in the areas of environmental restoration, social justice, and spiritual fulfillment. If you would like to receive our complimentary newsletter, The Well of Light, make a contribution, or order any of our past